Are you practically telling us that you will be able to ask franchises to rotate players, keeping in mind India's workload management? And he said yes, we are above the franchise. BCCI is the supreme body. We will decide how the players workload is managed. So he said it in as many words without mincing any of his words. So he said it.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I heard the same, something like similar to this in 2021, I think.
23.
That they will practice with Duke's ball during the IPL.
But even in
That never
2023, when the commandment was issued that, okay, franchises will have to coordinate with the NCA and with the BCCI over player workload, player availability, player fitness. When was that implemented? I mean, respect to Jay Shah, he has to also have a filibuster like, we are the supreme body. I mean, he can't say, I think the franchise, he didn't make a candid confession like Rohit Sharma did. Like the franchisees owners for 2 months.
But also put it this way, Rohit Sharma is in a different position. Jay Shah is in a position where he can actually enact what he is saying. Rohit Sharma, at the end of the day, Indian captain, legend of the game, still a player. So, I do agree with what he's saying. In theory, on paper, they do have the power to tell the franchises, listen, rest these players. Will it happen? Again, I'm saying I'll believe it when I see it, because I've heard these diktats multiple times. 21, as you were mentioning, because you had the World Cup right after the second half of the IPL. 22, same thing, because again, you had the World Cup coming up later in that year. You had Asia Cup. There was a lot of talk. But 22, we saw Bumrah played 14 games with Mumbai being wooden spooners. 23, in fact, 23, there was the other diktat, which he was pointing out, the Duke's ball diktat. And the Nets, you have to be practicing the Duke ball.
Jameson at that time.
Kyle Jameson?
Yeah, Kyle Jameson, and he refused
not in
to
23.
Not in 23, 21.
Yeah, 21
when
Jameson
they was playing New Zealand. So I think even Virat asked him to and he refused. He mentioned this in an interview later. He said no, not with the Duke.
I can't help but agree with all of you guys that I don't know whether this is, posturing by the BCCI. Is it, one thing, is it lip service, or do they really mean business? We'll get to know. But, there are past instances, as you mentioned, it's not happened. Also, how do you tell a franchise who has paid XYZ amount to get the services of a player and ask that franchise to rest a particular player while BCCI may be a supreme body? Does that mention in the contract? Because as we know, IPL franchises work very professionally. They've been very professional in removing or making appointments, whether it is their coaching staff, whether it's their captaincy, whatever, so they decide based on whatever they think. I mean, sometimes it's the ruthless approach, whatever they think works best. So there is no scope for emotions, which we sometimes do see in Indian cricket. Does not happen in franchise cricket, which is fair because they've gone down the professional route. Will a professional franchise agree to a BCCI diktat? Will they now say that, listen, we signed contracts with you, we paid you a franchise fee for 10 years every year, and when we signed contracts, none of this was mentioned? Because if all of this was mentioned, we would have renegotiated it or done something. So will franchises give in to BCCI? I know a lot of people will say, franchise could look at it compassionately and see it for Indian cricket. After all, everyone wants India to win. I'm afraid that also doesn't work, because for them, just like any corporate structure, while you work in a corporate structure and you want to do everything for the country in terms of the regulations you follow, the tax practices, your waste disposal, looking after the environment, to try and do all of those things. You have CSR, all of that you do, companies do. But what is the first thing that companies do or corporates do? First thing is the business, the health of the business. Everything else, yes, it is to be done, but it is secondary. Similarly, an IPL franchise, first thing will only look after their interests and what works best for a franchise, and then maybe look at what. So even looking at it compassionately, it's not going to work, which is why I think, does the BCCI already know that? Is it just, to put an image out so that everyone knows who's the boss? It's much like, I mean, like you have these husband-wife jokes where, outside the house, the husband on many occasions will show that, he's the boss, but at home, who the boss is, so
That's the way.
it's,
That's the way. Yeah.
it's pretty much
I'm
like,
the only
like
one here who can't relate to this.
no, but you must have heard husband-wife jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, is it that okay?
See, so the
At least tell your
newest
wife that
tradition,
listen, when we
newest
go out,
tradition.
if for a wedding we are going, at least let the relatives know that I'm the boss. When we come back home, then obviously you are.
It's
and
the,
I'll
it's the
follow.
lion analogy, that the lion is the king of the jungle, but when it's
He's
the lion and lioness together, then we know who the queen is.
Yeah.
True that.
Newest experience. Shane sir has the freshest experience to
No,
it.
but even before he experienced, I'm sure he read about it.
Yeah, there's
But
nothing new. We live,
experiencing it firsthand is a different thing altogether. Should be.
Yeah.
Which is why I find this hard to believe that any of this would be done. See, I think the best example is to see what's happening in football, right? It's the clubs that have the first right. International teams do want their players available, but then it is dependent on player to player. It's the clubs that decide. They in fact manage the workload. They sometimes tell the players you can't go and play. If their medical staff or their training staff has said that no, there is a niggle, or he's already played so many minutes of international football or competitive football, then he should not be playing now. So they decide, and I think gradually as you move on, that will increasingly start happening in Indian cricket as well.